HowlSage, Sages of Darkness, Book 1. Written by Brock Eastman. Narrated by J.J. Battiston. Chapter 4, Wednesday, October 4th. My shoulders jerked back and forth. Ike's bright blue eyes stared down at me as he shook me awake. He wasn't your stereotypical inventor, though he displayed several of the traits. Crazy hair with rubbish in it, eyes full of energy like he'd downed a venti quad shot espresso blended with an Energen drink, soot and dirt streaking his face, and a full, bright smile revealing perfectly straight white teeth. "Taylor, I've zeroed in on a few of the mine tunnels. That sample you brought of fur, it contained trace metals and minerals, and the mines are known to contain them." His voice was a needle piercing my just wakening eardrums. By sample, he meant the HowlSage's tail. I rolled away from him and groaned heavily, hoping he'd realize I was still half asleep and leave. "Taylor, are you awake?" he asked, hopping onto my bed and peering over me. He cocked his head like a chipper parakeet. He didn't get the hint. It was hard to get angry with someone so full of life. I glanced at the clock. 5 a.m., I shouted. Forget that. It was too early to be kind. "Ike, get out of here. I barely went to sleep a minute ago." Ike's smile didn't fade. "No, you didn't. You went to bed earlier than normal. You slept 5.5 hours. His factual analysis ground on me. He smiled wider. "Well, you're awake now. Did you hear what I said?" Ike asked, my protest for sleep in one ear and out the other. He'd gone from parakeet to a terrier puppy, hopping up and down for attention. "What's for breakfast?" I rubbed my eyes, then yawned. Ike's answer was a rapid-fire stream of words. "Not sure. I haven't slept yet, or ate, but I'm ready to eat if you are." "You're still awake from last night?" I stood and walked to my closet. My clothing variety was lacking. Basically, I owned 2 shirt styles, white V-necks for every day, and black athletic shirts for hunting. The black shirts were a new addition since being assigned hunter status. There were a few black fleece jackets for hunting as well, but it was only now getting cold enough to need them. The next stop was my dresser, and other than underwear and socks, there were 7 pairs of jeans, all the same style, all a variety of blue, a dozen pairs of black athletic pants, and a few pairs of shorts. I grabbed a pair of shorts. "It's 30 degrees outside," Ike said. I glanced at the frosted window pane and took a pair of jeans instead. Ike picked up my current good read from the nightstand, a comic book titled The Howling of Hamburg. "Research?" I pulled on my jeans. I guess. They never get it right." Ike was referring to Hollywood's and mainstream authors' misconceptions of the realities of the evil we faced. Vampires as heroes, werewolves as protectors, witches and wizards as schoolchildren. True. "So, what was it like?" He meant facing the HowlSage. I thought for a moment. What I saw last night would frighten a grown man, no less a 13-year-old, even one immersed in the world of demon fighting. "It's hairy. Really hairy." I glanced away. "Fur, you mean?" "Yeah, fur." "Was my sketch accurate?" "You've never seen one, or been part of a hunt for one?" "No, I mean HowlSage risings aren't all that common," Ike said. "How tall?" 7 feet or so. We both knew it would get a whole lot bigger. "How big were the fangs?" I smiled. Not at the thought of the foaming smirk of the HowlSage, but at Ike's pure analysis. I didn't get close enough to measure. I pulled my t-shirt over my head. "Wow." Ike looked up from the drawing. "Were you... I mean, I know you probably weren't, but..." He hesitated. "Was I scared?" I finished for him. "Sure, a little." I could be honest with Ike. He was my friend. Maybe my only. Indeed, he was the only one my age I could talk to about hunting. A real war between good and evil, heaven and hell, raged around me. Without a doubt, what we fought was from hell. I considered showing Ike the tail I'd cut off the HowlSage from last night, but then I had second thoughts. He might want to analyze it, which would mean he'd show it to his dad, who would show it to McGarrett, who would probably make me burn it. So I slipped on a pair of black shoes, and we headed to the old elevator. The smell of fresh bacon, eggs, and cinnamon pancakes filled the air as a mouth-watering aroma. My stomach grumbled, giving me an unpleasant thought about the HowlSage staring at me with its fangs bared, like it was going to make me a late-night snack. "Good morning," echoed Mrs. Riley's cheery voice as she whirled out of the kitchen. The double doors swung shut behind her. She waddled over and hugged us. Her bright white apron was clean as always, though she'd been cooking up a storm. Mrs. Riley was a hunter back when she was in her 20s. It was hard to imagine her fighting a demon in combat because she was so lovely. She treated Ike and me like grandsons. Ashley Meadows was McGarrett and Mrs. Riley's family's assignment. They grew up together and eventually fell in love, but not before a swarm of swamp sage attacked Mrs. Riley. McGarrett, although not a hunter at the time, saved her life. How, though, he'd never told me. Mrs. Riley pulled several pieces of debris from Ike's hair and sighed. "If your mom were here, she'd have you in a shower by now." "7 days," he said, but he wasn't talking about his mom's return. He was counting the days since he'd last showered. Ike's mom, Diane, was not missing or dead. She was visiting her parents in Germany. That was the other thing about Ike. He was of German descent and in the same family tree as some great German scientists, supposedly Einstein. Ike and I sat as Mrs. Riley disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. I took 2 bites of eggs and a sip of fresh orange juice when Ike's dad and McGarrett walked in. It was hard to tell if they were arguing or agreeing when they entered. They were quiet as they joined us at the table. Mrs. Riley had a firm rule when we ate: no discussion of work at the breakfast, lunch, or dinner table, or any other occasion that involved food. Food should be enjoyed without the stress of work. We finished, and Ike and I followed McGarrett and Mr. Swigert to the workshop. McGarrett updated us on intelligence he had received from the Society's headquarters. After school, McGarrett was waiting for us. We drove to the parking garage behind the police station. Chief Rutledge was waiting inside. "Taylor, tonight Chief Rutledge is going to be escorting you around town," McGarrett said as we got out of the Rolls. "All your gear is already packed in the back of his truck. You'll have dinner with him, and then wait until sunset to take off. We'll be in contact the whole time." I shrugged. "Why?" "It's my theory that the Cloak was watching for us to depart from the Pink Hippo last night," McGarrett said. "That's how they knew we were coming up the road. They had the element of surprise, but this time, we will." "But if they are watching, won't they see me not come home with you?" I asked. "Oh, we've got a plan for that," McGarrett said. He reached into the trunk of the Rolls and pulled out a mannequin that looked almost like me, sort of like those wax statues you see of famous singers and actors. "Whoa," I said. "That's really... And how did... Dad has a 3D printer he can use with latex. He screened a photo of you onto it," Ike explained. "It's easy." "And once we're on the property, we're out of view of any prying eyes," McGarrett said. "All right," I agreed. "Then we'll leave you two to it," McGarrett said. "If we spend too much time here and they are watching, they may get suspicious." He and Ike climbed back into the car. Ike sat in the back, next to fake Taylor. I wonder if they'll let me keep that in my room when we finish with it. The chief led me through a door, then up a stairwell to the 3rd story of the station. We passed a few deputies and one secretary behind a desk. She gave me a kind smile as I passed. I followed the chief into his office, and he motioned to the chair. He wasn't very old for a police chief, early 30s, but he knew his stuff. He was also the only one on the police force who knew about what the society did and why we were here in Ashley Meadows. "I got another hour or so before we head out," he said. "McGarrett said you'd work on homework or whatnot. There's a pot of coffee in the break room and..." He paused, a smirk across his face. "And a box of donuts if you want one." A smile spread across my lips, knowing how cliché it was. Police with their donuts. "Thanks." The time passed quickly, and we went back down the stairwell and into the garage where his gray pickup waited for us. He handed me a gray jacket, sunglasses, and a black ball cap. "Didn't know I'd be looking all witness protection," I asked. "Too much?" Chief Rutledge asked. I nodded. "I'll wear a cap, though." Stitched on the front was an Ashley Meadows Police Department patch. We drove to a small Chinese restaurant on the outside of town and went in. I might have eaten a bit too much orange chicken, or it could have been the 5th egg roll that put me over, or maybe the 2 donuts I ate at the station. As the sun began to set and darkness spread over the town, we headed toward an old train depot and pulled underneath a large overhang for storing luggage before loading. Then I pulled on my black hunting clothes and jacket, armed myself with my weapons, and the chief helped me get the J-Pack situated. "Ready?" he asked. "Yep." I lowered my goggles. "You know, one of these J-Packs could be a quicker way to patrol the town for you or your deputies." He patted the side of his truck. "I'll leave the spy gadget stuff to you for now." "Right," I said. Then I slid my fingers up the top of the opposite glove. I saw Chief Rutledge get into his truck and drive away. "McGarrett, come in," I said. "This is Taylor." "We read you," Mr. Swigert said. "McGarrett is finishing up a phone call with the council." That made me curious, but I resisted asking about it for the moment. "For now, we want you to head toward the mines again," Mr. Swigert said. Headlights flickered off the streets below, but soon disappeared, as did the glow of street lamps. A thick blanket of green replaced them with the occasional flash of yellow. The chilly wind bit my cheeks as I flew, and steering was more difficult tonight, as several gusts caught me off guard. As I approached the first mine entrance, McGarrett broke in over my headset. "Taylor, sensors are picking up something near entrance 8. An arrow flashed on my goggles with a distance. Then, the image moved as I oriented myself. I was coming straight in on it. I circled overhead, searching for the HowlSage. Had it grown since last night? Would the cloak be there? After 3 passes, I saw nothing in the clearing outside the entrance. Could it have already passed into the woods on the mountainside? "McGarrett, nothing here," I say into my mic. "Roger. We got another sensor triggered near entrance 4, McGarrett said. A second later, my goggles changed, redirecting me to the assigned coordinates. My goggles and the team sitting in the command center sure made it easy. It almost surprised me that Mr. Swigert hadn't programmed some sort of autopilot into the J-Pack. But I'd better be careful. If I suggested it, he might, which would take all the fun and freedom out of flying. The area around entrance 4 was entirely overgrown with trees, and it appeared a rock slide filled in a good portion of the location. "Permission to land," I said. There was a long silence. "The tree covering is too thick here," I said. "Negative," McGarrett said. "Remain airborne." I grunted and dropped my altitude, but I did as commanded and remained in the air. "We have a beacon on the west slope of Elsie Peak," McGarrett said. "Proceed." I did, and the evening continued like this as I visited several more beacons over the next 2 hours. Not once did McGarrett allow me to land and scout the area. "All right, no new alerts for a while now," McGarrett said. "Why didn't the HowlSage try going to town?" I asked. "We're theorizing now," McGarrett said. "But it's day 2. It and the Cloak know there is a hunting team in the area. They could be testing their boundaries, the territory. It might be simply hunting and feeding on the nearby game. A coyote, deer, bear." I circled. "Look, it's getting late," McGarrett said. "We think it's likely the HowlSage returned to its den. Come on back." My destination again changed, and I started toward the pink hippo. That was frustrating. McGarrett hadn't truly let me hunt. He hadn't let me go after the demon, even though we'd been tracking it. How was I supposed to fight and banish it from the sky? And if he weren't going to let me into the mines, then we'd never stop the demon before the full moon on Halloween. Maybe he didn't believe I was up to the challenge. Perhaps he was sure I would die.